And that shook everybody up a lot. The next week, the 2 days later, was a Sicha, Parsha Shmini. But 9 days later, the following week, Tazria Metzora began. They didn't exactly begin. I mean, really, they started before Pesach also. But I mean, you can call this just to make things easier. The beginning of a year-long series of sichas describing and explaining the whole process of Golus and Geula in a completely, I wouldn't say new, but in an extremely complete way. And it starts with this sicha in the famous sicha of Chav Ches Nisan. So the Rebbe said that the way to bring Mashiach is to bring Urs to tell you in the Kalim of Tikkun, bring lights of chaos into Kalim of fixedness. In other words, bring lights that are so powerful that generally they can't be expressed in Kalim. Bring them into Kalim. Bring them down, which is what Mashiach is ultimately all about. The level of light that usually can't be revealed is revealed. And the Rebbe talks about what that means in Avodah. Now, the background, of course, is in the Parshas talking about Tsaras, right? That disease, that skin disease that people get when evidently they speak ill of another. Some people say leprosy is not leprosy, but I mean, I guess it's like that. Leprosy is also a skin disease. But it doesn't exist anymore. Tsaras, we'll see why. I mean, I'm not going to say explicitly, but it'll be pretty clear once we see what it's all about, knowing that. Okay, and those two parshas are often read together, Tazria Metzora. Now, the beginning of Tazria is actually about a woman giving birth and the different halachas that relate to that. And then the whole rest of the parsha is all about the different signs that indicate that a person is afflicted with this horrid reality called Tsaras. And then the second parsha is Zos Teres Metzora, is how to rid oneself of Tsaras. Right? How do you once a person is no longer tamei, so what do? And how do they become not tamei? That they all of a sudden, whatever signs on their skin that they had have disappeared, etc. Okay? Now the Rebbe is going to explain all of that in the realm of Golus and Geula. What's Golus? What's Geula? And this is an extremely fundamental sicha, on a certain level of watershed sicha.
This was 9 days after.
1991, spring of 91, right after Pesach, again, after the famous sicha of Chav Ches Nisan, that I've done everything I can do to get you to want to bring Mashiach, now you have to do it. And that shook everybody up a lot. And then the Rebbe spent the next 11 months talking about Mashiach in a way that really had basically never been talked about in that way. I happened to be there that Shabbos, Tazria Metzora. You could cut the tension with a knife. 770 was on edge because of what was going on. See what the Rebbe said. Behemshich l'medubar u'mudgash beyeser b'zman ha'achar. Now it's long. If we don't get through it all, okay, we have 3 days: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, and then Sunday I'm not here, but it might be there's no Chassidus anyway, because hopefully, if we're bringing Yud Shvat, we'll carry on into Yud Aleph Shvat and into the wee hours of the morning, even though it started after lunch on Shabbos day. I'm not going to be here, but that's my hope, so that Yud Shvat will be a proper celebration. And we'll see. I mean, that's up to whoever's for bringing, right? But if there is a Shir Sunday, so then Mendel Sobransky will do a one-off, and then we'll go further on Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday I leave for 2 weeks. Part of which will be recruiting, part of which will be seeing my mother, part of which will also be for bringing with the Ark over in Crown Heights, hopefully.
Are you going down to Florida for spring training?
I'm going for spring training, Doc. That's actually why I'm going. I'm just telling people that I'm going to go to different campuses, but I'm actually going to be going from stadium to stadium.
I'm proud of you.
I'm really, I really want to go to the Pittsburgh Pirates spring training. I think that would probably be one of the most exciting things in the
think so.
world. I mean, I can't think of too many things more exciting in life than to go see. Maybe the Tampa Bay, whatever they're called. Maybe that would be more exciting to see all the young stars in action.
I'm really proud of you.
I'm glad, Doc. I'm glad. Just don't tell any of the guys, okay? I don't want them to know.
I'm not supposed to know this, but if you're going to spring training, would you be pitching or catching?
Well, it might be by the time I'm there, other people will also be there. I did play catcher in baseball. I don't have the physique for it, I understand that, but I did play catcher, except my father was very upset because he said a catcher shouldn't wear glasses because he's going to get a ball in the face and break his glasses. But I like playing catcher. It was interesting because you're in on everything. It's like you're not just sitting there watching most of the time. But whatever. But I don't know. Maybe when the outfielders show up, I'll show up, and maybe I'll meet Willie Mays. In as a continuation of that which is spoken about and emphasized more, meaning greatly, Bazmana Achrein Mamish, in the recent times Mamish, meaning Mamash, last week, 9 days ago, Al Derech HaTzarech B'Pulosei, regarding the necessity of action, shall call Echad ve'echad Yisrael, of every single Jew, Lases Kol Talui Bei, to do everything that is dependent on him, Lahavi as Mashiach Tzidkenu, to bring Mashiach B'Feil Mamish, in actuality, Tekef from Yad Mamish, immediately Mamish. It's not like the Rebbe's warming up. That's the first line of the Farbrengen, right? Usually that's the last song, and then after they say some drasha, they say, and it should be God's will that Mashiach comes now. No, Rebbe started with that. Keva should be a menu elu mamish, since these days mamish, im siyuma shel Chodesh Nisan, with this completion of Chodesh Nisan of Tehei 5,000. Tehei Shnas Erenu Niflois, that was the acronym that the Rebbe gave the year, Tafshin and Aleph. This should be the year of the Pasuk, Erenu Niflois, just like the days that I took you out of Mitzrayim, so too, it's a Pasuk talking about Mashiach, Erenu Niflois, I will show you wonders. So that whole year, the Rebbe talked about the Tehei Shnas Erenu Niflois. Kalu Kol Kitzim, all ends are done, meaning all those things that had to be done have been done. Ketza Yomin, Ketza Yomin, different aspects of what's necessary somehow in order to prepare the world for Mashiach. Kepshutei Mamish, simply. Ubevadai, and definitely, Sheteke from Yad Ba Mashiach Tzidkenu, and immediately Mashiach is coming. V'kol echad ve'echad mara be'etzboi, and everybody will point with his finger. Va'emer hine zeh, behold this, Melech HaMashiach Ba is coming, or has come. Shekvar Ba, he's already come. B'loshen Avar, B'rega Shalifnei Rega Zeh, in the moment before this moment. Yesh Levar Hadgoshas Inyan Geula Pulas Kol Echad Ve'echad Yisrael, there is to explain the emphasis on this whole notion of redemption, U'Pulas Kol Echad Ve'echad Yisrael, and the actions necessary of every single Jew, Bavasa Gul, in bringing Geula, B'Inyana Yom Shabbos Kodesh Zeh. How does this Shabbos relate to that? That's what the Rebbe talked about every single Shabbos for the next year. L'kol l'rosh, first and foremost, b'inyanei hatara shayachim b'miyuchad b'inyanei yom Shabbos. Look, I'm saying, b'inyanei hatara shayachim b'miyuchad l'yom Shabbos. Right, first and foremost, the parsha. But there's more things. There's the date, the month, etc. But also the parsha. But Parshas HaShavua, Kelel Gam HaParsha Shemaschilim Likrei B'Mincha, and this also includes the Parsha that we will begin to read at Mincha, because every Shabbos we read at least two Parshas. We read the Parsha of the day, and then at Mincha we read another Parsha. So the Rebbe almost always discusses both in Farbrengens. V'chein b'Perkei Avos the Yom Shabbos Kodesh Zeh, also the Perkei Avos of this Shabbos, because it's after Pesach, it's summertime, we're saying Perkei Avos every week. V'gam b'Teichna Shel Hazman, also the unique nature of the time. It's the Vaviar. Hein b'negei l'klal tzachedish, both regarding the generality of the month. Hein b'negei l'mei Sfira, and also days of Sfira, because also Sfira Soimer. Right? So there's all sorts of things going on at this particular point, and all of those things have to be connected to the Inyan of Geula. The Rebbe is about to ask 4 questions about the parshas. Okay? The parshas of Shavua, Tazria Metzora, Mudgash B'Yetzer Inyan Geula. In this parsha, Tazria Metzora, it's 2 parshas. As again, Tazria, we said, begins with the idea of Isha Ki Tazria V'Yolda Zachar, a woman who gives seed and gives birth to a male. And it talks about the different halachas relative to Tum and Tara, as opposed relative to giving birth to a male or a female. Then that's the beginning of the parsha. It's relatively short. Then the whole rest of the parsha talks about the signs that indicate that a person has this bizarre thing called saras. The parsha Shavuot Tazria Metzora Mudgash B'Yetzer Inyan Geula. Tazria, the name of the parsha Tazria, she shall give seed. Isha ki Tazria v'Yolda Zachar. A woman who gives seed and gives birth to a zachar. Ki Yadua. Shaleida, the notion of giving birth, v'Yolda, remezes ala Geula. It's very connected to the notion of Geula. Yolda Tzion es baneh, that Tzion will give birth to her children. The idea that the days up until the coming of Mashiach are like Chavlei Leida, like the birth pangs, and then Mashiach is the Leida, is the revelation of what was hidden. Might have been a painful process to bring about the revelation, but the revelation happened. The Leidus Zachar, the idea of giving birth in general, is Shaykh to Mashiach. The Leidus Zachar, and giving birth of a male, remezes ala choyzik v'toykef, the strength and the power, Zachar, the Geula mitis v'shlema. Generally, this is in Zachar and Nekeva. There are many differences. The power of Nekeva is dafka an inner power. The power of Zachar is external, the notion of strength. Men are stronger than women. I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that, but that's just the way it is, right? Men are stronger than women. So the idea of Leida Zachar is a Leida that's a powerful and strong Leida. And what does that mean relative to the notion of Geula? Geula Nitzchis, an eternal Geula, she'ein acharei Golus, that doesn't have a Golus after it. Right? Shir Chadash, Lashon Zachar. There are 10 shirim, 10 songs, often referred to as Shira Chadasha, feminine. Shira Chadash, because you can say Shira, a song, or Shir, a song. So very often it's referred to in Psukim, Shira Chadasha, feminine, meaning a Shira Chadasha, something new, but something new that isn't strong enough to last. Shir Chadash is dafka, the song that is the song of Mashiach, which is the song that will be eternal. Shir Chadash Lashon Zachar. Pasuk in Tehillim. Al Yedei Mashiach Tzidkenu, meaning the Geula will be the final Geula. There have been many Geulas. Geulas Mitzrayim, the Geula of Purim, a certain level the Geula of Hanukkah. Right? There have been different states of Geula for the Jewish people throughout our history, but there's only one Geula that is eternal, that doesn't have Golus after it. Even as powerful as Geulas Mitzrayim was, it was a Geula that was followed by Golus. And what's the Geula? The Shein Acharei Golus is the Geula of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Sheva Yolda Zachar, this idea of Yolda Zachar, Reimes Aleidas His Galus Nishmas Mashiach. This hints at the birth and the revelation of the neshama of Mashiach, shehi b'madrega yesoyene, which is of the highest level, mi alma de dechura, from the masculine world. Right? That's the masculine world. Does not mean a place where men come from. It means a place where neshamas that are of tzaddikim come from. Right? The Alter Rebbe said about his daughter Freidka that her neshama is alma de dechura. That her neshama was from the place where neshamas of tzaddikim come from, and it's really not only tzaddikim but dafka rebbeim and a nasi. So meaning Freidka would have been a nasi if she were a man. She happened to be a woman, so but she had we've talked about her before. Freidka had a chavrusa in Chassidus with her father, the Alter Rebbe. Even the Mittler Rebbe wasn't allowed there. The Mittler Rebbe used to consult with her in Inyanim of Avodah. He would ask his older sister certain questions in Avodah Hashem. She was evidently an astounding woman. She's, I told you the story, but it's worth telling again. She's buried next to the Alter Rebbe in his Tzion, in Hadich. Now, we should bury people next to the Rebbeim. So, unless it's another Rebbe. But She wanted to be buried there. Her father passed away. She got sick. She lasted 6 months without her father in the world, and then she passed away. She was married with children. She passed away. She wanted to be buried next to the Alter Rebbe, to her father, and of course the Chevra Kadisha was not so excited about this idea. So she, I don't know what day it is. She must. I mean, I've been there. I didn't look at her. Take a peek and see what the date is. She called in the Chevra Kadisha, and she said vidui. She said, confession, vidui, that we say if a person is fortunate enough to know when the neshama is going to leave, and they'll say vidui. She said vidui. She said Shema Yisrael. She then said, neshama shenasat bi taharahi, the neshama that you put into me is pure. Tabarasata yitzata tanafachta bi, you brought it down through Elam Abriya, Yitzira, and blew it into me. And you will take it from me in the future. And she stopped and she said, Tati, ich kum. Tati, I'm coming. She passed away. So they buried her next to her father. They said, if this way, they didn't know who she was. They figured out when they saw this, they said, whoa, okay, I guess we better bury her next to her father. That was her farewell to Elam Hazeh. She was evidently quite an amazing lady. So the Alter Rebbe said about her that she's Mi'alma D'Dechur. It's not a matter of male, female. It's a matter of, in this case, stronger, weaker. Certain special neshamas come from Alma D'Dechur, and obviously the neshama of Mashiach comes from that place. And that's Yalda Zachar. That's the hint of Yalda Zachar in Panemius. Ubeprati is Yeser on a more detailed level. Isha Tazria, a person who gives seed. Kayal Klolas Aveda the Knesset Israel. This is relating to the general Aveda of the Jewish people. Isha. We're the Isha. The Eibush is the Ish. We're the Isha. Bezman HaGolus, in the time of Golus, Shenim Shala Lezuriya, which is compared to planting, or planting the seeds of the Geula, Tazriya. So Isha ki Tazriya, when the Jewish people plant the seeds, Kamesha Kosev V'Zarasiya Liba Aretz, I'll plant her for me in the ground. Habayim Yashreish Yaakov, another pasuk from Yeshayahu talking about the idea of Am Yisrael being rooted in the ground. V'al Yedei Hazriya, through the planting, D'Maseinu V'Avedesenu, Kol Zman Meshech HaGolus, of all of our deeds and service throughout all the days of Golus, we're planting the seeds for the sprouting of Mashiach. Na'ases tekef u'miyad l'lei hefsek klal, it should come immediately without any interruption, hatzmicho, the sprouting. Yotzitzu parach Yisrael, that Yisrael will sprout. Right? That's the end of the pasuk. Abayim Yashrish Yaakov, Yotzitzu parach Yisrael, that Am Yisrael does the planting and is rooted in the ground, and ultimately what sprouts out is the flowers of Israel, which is what? Is Geula. The Geula mitis v'shlema, of the true and complete redemption. Al Yedei Mashiach Tzidkenu, she'ein acharei Golus, that there's no Golus after it, v'yalda Zachar. So Isha ki Tazriya, when the Jewish people plant the seeds, when we do our Aveda, and throughout all the years of Golus, planting the seeds through our positive action, to ultimately bring about the sprouting of Geula. So what v'yalda Zachar, they give birth to Zachar, that level of Geula, which is the Geula of Zachar, which is ein acharei Golus. There's no Golus after.
It's like the bracha in the Yonida, it's like that's the Tzemach, right?
Yeah, also Tzemach David, even though, the sprouting of David, even though Tzemach is also one of the names of Mashiach. Right? Umetzora. So that's Tazria. That's the panemius of the name of the Parsha Tazria. That's what it relates to. Umetzara. How does Metzara have anything to do with Mashiach? It seems to be the opposite, but of course, many of you have probably heard about the famous Gemara in Sanhedrin. Right? The Gemara, Gemara, Ma Shmei Shel Mashiach. Right? There's a Gemara there where the name of Mashiach is asked, and every group of people They're asked what's his name, and each group of students gives the name of their Rebbe, right? And then and they bring a pasuk supporting that. And then one of the names, Masha Shmei Mashiach, Chivra Debei Rebbe Shmei, the white one of the house of Rebbe. And what's Chivra? Metzora, because the Metzora is white. The mark of the Tzaras is white. The Metzora of Beis Rebbe, the one who has Tzaras of Beis Rebbe. That's how Rashi explains that Gemara. Chivra, the white one. What does it mean white? I mean he has Tzaras. Shenemar, as it says about Mashiach, and Achein Chalinu Hu Nasu, our sicknesses he carries, Umachevenu Svalam, and our pains he's sovel, he has to deal with, puts up with. Vanachnu Chashavnuhu, and we considered him Nagua, smitten, had a nega, had some sort of injury, problem, muka elokim, someone who's smitten by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, umauna, and who's been experiencing affliction. It's been afflicted and smitten. A pasuk about Mashiach in Yeshayahu. Achen chalinu hu nasa. He carries our diseases, our sicknesses. Machevenu zvalam. He feels our pains. V'nachnu chashavnu, and we thought about him that he's negua muka elokim u'ma'una. My simoni. So now, one of there's some amazing Gemaras about Mashiach there in Sanhedrin. So one again, a very famous Gemara. Everybody sort of knows this Gemara. It's a famous Gemara. That Rabbi Shua ben Levi runs into Eliyahu Novi at the opening of the cave of the Rashbi in Meron, and he asks him two questions. He asks him, is he going to get Olam Haba? He also asks him, when's Mashiach coming? Masaika Asimar, which is really interesting because there's that famous letter of the Baal Shem Tov where the Baal Shem Tov says to his brother-in-law Gershon Chutov that on Rosh Hashanah he experienced an Aliyah Neshama, and it was the highest he'd ever managed. Again, he got into the Heichel Shel Mashiach and he asked Mashiach, Masaika Asimar, when is Mar coming? So it's very interesting that the same question was asked. So why there's sichas as to why the Baal Shem Tov asked it again. That's not our issue now. But what did Eliyahu Novi answer Yeshua ben Levi? He said, go ask him. Go ask Mashiach when he's coming. He says, easy. So there's two girsas, the gates of Karta or the gates of Romi. Now Karta can also mean city, but there's also a place called Karta, right? Carthage, I think it's called in English. It was some empire way back then. It's disappeared, like all the rest of them. So it's a question as to where is it the gates of the city, which would then refer to Romi, or is it the gates of Karta itself? But where's Mashiach? So Mashiach is on the outside of the gates, and how are you? So he says, well, how will I recognize him? So he says, so Rabbi Eliyahu Navi tells Rabbi Shua ben Levi he's going to be afflicted with all sorts of skin ailments, and everybody else is going to be taking off all of their bandages at once, putting on whatever medicine they put on, and then putting all their bandages back on. He'll take off one bandage, put on whatever, the herbs he's supposed to put it on, and then put the bandage back, because in case he's called to redeem the Jewish people, he doesn't want to be delayed. So he does a bandage at a time. That's what the Gemara says about Mashiach. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi goes and finds Mashiach, and he asks him, when are you coming? So he says, today. So he's very excited. So he goes away, sits on a rock, I guess, and waits. Mashiach comes. So Mashiach doesn't come that day, and I guess maybe Hayom could be included tomorrow, so it doesn't come that day. So then he goes back to Eliyahu Navi and says, Mashiach kashakar bi. Mashiach lied to me. Said today, and he didn't come. So Eliyahu Navi says to him, Hayom b'keli tishma'u. Today, if in his voice you will hearken. You have to listen to his voice. Now, simple pshat is the Eibishter's voice. Right? He'll come today if you listen to his voice. I mean, if you do those things that the Eibishter wants, then Mashiach will come today. Right? Chassidim explain it, but Pnimius, and it's also a simple pshat in the Gemara. Today, if you listen to his voice, who's his? It could also be Mashiach. What does Mashiach say? I'm coming today. Do you listen? Do you believe him? If you believe him, you will. If you think it's just a nice idea, today will be like tomorrow. You're always a day away. So that's that story. So now the Rebbe is going to quote part of that story. My Simone, here's Mashiach, who's a Metzora. He has tzaras. How can Mashiach have tzaras? It's the opposite. It's Tuma. Right? My Simone, what are the signs? This is what Yeshua ben Levi asks Eliyahu Navi in the Gemara. Yosef Beinei, so Eliyahu Navi answers. Yosef Beinei Ani Sev Lechaloim. He's sitting amongst the poor people who are afflicted with sickness. Minu Goyim. Right? They have nega. V'hunami menuga. He also has nega. Nega tzaras. It's called nega tzaras, the affliction of tzaras. Tichsi v'hu mechaylo mipsha'enu. He's become sick from our sickness. Uksiv chalinu hunasa. Our sickness he carries. Meaning all of the imperfections of Golus, Mashiach is carrying with him. The Maharal says an amazing pshat in the Gemara that the Maharal is just amazing at noticing the details in all these stories. Where's Mashiach sitting? It's at the gates of Rome. Okay, now gates. What do you think of gates? When you think of gates, what do you think of? What are gates for? Borders. An entryway. Oh, you're fair. An entryway. I think of going into the city. Okay, that's true.
Or also an exit.
It's also now. But you said what's true. When we think of a gate, we think of it going in. Yeah, of course, it also is where you go out, but we're not in there, so we think of it as the way in. All right. So the Maharal says, "Where's Mashiach? He's sitting at the gates of Rome." What does that mean? He's outside of Rome. If you're in Rome, you'll never see Mashiach. You got to get out of Rome before you can talk to Mashiach. If you're stuck in the world view of Rome, in the world view of the world at large, you'll never see Mashiach. Got to get out of Rome. It's such an incredible idea. That's the Maharal. He mentions that. Nowhere in the Gemara does say that. Just says he's sitting at the gates. But where? He's not on the inside. It's obvious he's on the outside, right? Where are these people going to be sitting? If you're stuck in Rome, Mashiach is something completely out of bounds, right? You'll think anybody who mentions it must be committable. If you're out of Rome, Golus is ridiculous. Mashiach is what makes sense. Golus is impossible to imagine. That's what the Rebbe is going to explain to us. But Prati is Yeser. So first we see that Mashiach is a Metzora, which is just crazy. Okay, it's the name of Mashiach in the Gemara. It's one of the names of Mashiach in the Gemara. Chivra the Bei Rebbe, and Rashi says it's the Metzora. So Parshas Metzora is Shayach the Mashiach. Only a Chassid could possibly chop such a thing. But I mean, it's simple pshat in the Gemara.
Can what such a thing?
Chop, grasp. Right?
So Mashiach's name is Metzora? Like that's one of the names for
The Gemara says Chivra the Bei Rebbe, and Rashi says that means Metzora. So yes, one of the names of Mashiach is Metzora the Bei Rebbe. What's Mashiach got to do with Tzaras? There won't be Tzaras being Mashiach. Mashiach is all about Torah, and Tzaras is all about Tuma. So that's what the Rebbe is going to explain in the Sicha. It's astounding. But Prati is Yeser. Kehem Shechakosov. Now this is the pasuk at the beginning of Parshas Metzora, second parsha. Zoistia Torah HaMetzora b'yom ta'arasa. This is the Torah of the Metzora in the day of his purity. Va'ad shenoyigim likrei b'parsha zu. We actually called the parsha b'shem Parshas Tara. The Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, of course, the Frierdiker Rebbe acted this way, and so the Rebbe follows suit. Frierdiker Rebbe used to refer to Parshas Metzora, and it was something that people did, but the Frierdiker Rebbe was very makbid on it. He never referred to it as Parshas Metzora. He referred to it as Parshas Tara. Metzora means Tuma. But the whole parsha talks about Tara. The whole parsha is how you become purified from tzaras. The parsha Tazria, and this is one of the questions the Rebbe is going to ask. The parsha with the name Tazria, and we just learned the name Tazria is a direct notion, a very, very open and obvious expression of Mashiach. Isha ki Tazria, when the Jewish people do the planting that they have to plant, v'yalda zacher, give birth to a geula she'ein acharei golus. They'll give birth to the geula, and that's Tazria. That's the first parsha. The second parsha is Metzora. Now, Metzora is a negative word, right? Even though the first parsha, interesting enough, is one of the questions I was going to ask. The first parsha, the content of the first parsha is all about saras. It's all about the disease, right? The name of the second parsha is Parshas Metzora, but it's actually all about Torah, as you see from the first pasuk. The first pasuk is talking about how you become purified from this reality called saras. So the name of the parsha is actually a negative thing, but the whole content of the parsha is positive. So that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe used to refer to the parsha as Parshas Torah. So that's what it's talking about. The whole parsha is talking about Torah, and the first pasuk mentions Torah. What does it say? Zoistia teres emetzer b'yim taharasei. Vad shenogim likrei parsha b'shem Parshas Torah. We call it Parshas Torah. Shemetzera hu shmei shemashiach b'zman hagolus. Metzora is the name of Mashiach in the time of Golus. Sha'av shemitzad atzmai, that even though in terms of himself, who betachlis shleimus, he's in a state of absolute wholeness. Kamosha Kosuv, like it says about Mashiach, Yaskil Avdi, he'll be very wise, Yarum, lofty, Vanasa, Vagava, Ma'oid, he'll be very lofty and uplifted, and the Drasha, why Ma'oid, he'll even be loftier than Adam, Ma'oid is Osius Adam Arishon, Mikol Makim, nevertheless, Sovel V'Kayev Ba'atzmei, he feels the pain. Sovel means sovel is you're dealing with something difficult. Right? Who sovel means that, meaning he's in pain as a result.
Suffer from?
Suffer from, yeah, but it's not exactly. Yeah, that's the idea, right? Okay. So he's sovel. You could say that in this context. He's suffering, and kayev ba'atzmei, and is pained himself. The tsar. The pain, umach and again, words for pain, koev, a golus, the troubles of golus. Who feels the golus more than anybody? Mashiach. Because Mashiach's aware of the beauty of Geula. If I don't know what Geula is, so then why would I think golus is an issue? But if my conscious reality is a reality of golus, but I'm stuck in golus, so then the pain of golus is very, very real. So that's the image of Mashiach at the gates of Rome. And here he is, extremely afflicted by the pains of the Golus. Ubeyim tarasei. So what's beyim tarasei? Rashi says, Shenirpa neget tzaras min tzarua, that it's healed, the neget tzaras, this affliction of tzaras, from the tzarua, the one who has tzaras. What's that? Kayal Ma'amade, that's the state, Umatzava, in the situation, Shemashiach Kishimizgala, when he's revealed, V'gerlas B'nai Yisrael. And he redeems the Jewish people, B'gula Mitzvah Shleima. Because the Metzora is the Mashiach in Golos. The Yom Tarase is the Mashiach in a state of Tara, meaning now he's been revealed as Mashiach and he's redeeming the Jewish people. So that's the first pasuk in the next parsha. Okay, so that's an overview of the two parshas, both shaykh to Geula in a very, very powerful way. But Tzarech Lavi, now the Rebbe is going to ask the four questions that we talked about, and you can see Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. Tzarech Lavi, a kesher v'shaykh is the base parshas. The connection and the relevance of these two parshas to each other, Tazria Metzora. In many years, they're read together. They're read together almost every year that's not a leap year. Now, 7 out of 19 years are leap years, but most years Tazria Metzora read together. Because there are 50 and a half weeks in a normal year, and there are 53 parshas. Now, there's also times when Yom Tov will fall out on a Shabbos, so then you won't lay that parsha that Shabbos. This year, Tashin Nun Aleph, so the Rebbe coined the famous phrase, which of course the Rebbe says when he coins it, that this is a famous phrase that everybody knows. No one ever heard of it before. And then it's all anybody said all year long because the Rebbe talked about it for 3 weeks. Parsha Shmini, the week before, was Parsha Shmini, the week before this Sicha. And Parsha Shmini was very unique that year. Shmini, Shmeina, Shmeina. Shmini, Parsha Shmini, the 8th day. Shmeina, 8 times. Shmeina, it'll be a fat year. Same word. Shmini, Shmeina, Shmeina. Now that year we read Parsha Shmini 8 times, only in Chutz La'aretz. Why? First day of Pesach was in Shabbos, and the 8th day of Pesach was in Shabbos. There is no 8th day here, right? So it can't ever happen here, right? Achron Shel Pesach was Shabbos. So that means, and it fell out in Parsha Shmini. So that means, but he didn't read Shmini because it was Pesach. So that means at Mincha Shabbos, the week before, you read Parsha Shmini. Sheni Chamishi, the week before Pesach, you read Parsha Shmini. That Shabbos, you didn't read Parsha Shmini. Well, that's not exactly true. You did. When? Mincha. Shabbos Mincha, you read Parsha Shmini again. That week, Sheni v'Chamishi, you didn't read Shmini because it was Pesach, so you're doing Pesach laning all week long. Then Shabbos, Achron Shel Pesach happens. So you don't lane Shmini because you're laning Achron Shel Pesach laning. But when do you lane Shmini on that day? Mincha. That's 5. Then Monday, Thursday, and then you actually lane the whole parsha on Shabbos. So you lane Shmini 8 times when it falls out that way. Now it can only fall out that way in Chutz La'aretz. Can't fall out that way here, right? Because we don't have an 8th day of Pesach. So we'll lane Shmini on what in Chutz La'aretz is Achron Shel Pesach. So that year, the Rebbe talked about this for a few weeks. Shmini, Shmeina, Shmeina. That this is a good year. It's okay. So that's what's going on in Tavshin and Aleph.
And what's the Shemen part? The last part you consider Shemen? Meaning, and that comes from where? It's just
Shmini also, Shmonat, the same word, same Shmini, Shmeina, Shmeina. That Shmini, the Parsha Shmini, 8 times, one expression of Shmini, 8, will be Shamein, will be fat and good. Same word, just a different expression of it. Right? Shmini, Shmeina, Shmeina. Okay, so the famous statement the Rebbe said. It was asking, have you ever heard this before? No one had ever heard of this before, but okay. I'm sure there was someone around who knew everything, and the Rebbe said it once, in passing once, and so they remembered, but the rest of us didn't remember this. So what the 2 parshas. So the 2 parshas are very interesting. The Rebbe says, Tazria Metzora, the Lechura, at first glance, Hashem Tazria. The name Tazria, which is the name of the first parsha, Shemitzad Atzmei Kasher Im Ha'iloda, that it itself is connected to birth, which is obviously something positive. Kimafurish B'Kosev, as is explained in the pasuk, Isha Ki Tazria V'Yolda Zachar, right? A woman who gives seed and gives birth to a Zachar. Shekasher Tazria, that when you plant the seeds, when you do the work necessary, Azai, then what happens? Ba Hemshech de V'Yolda, then that comes in continuation to V'Yolda. What is that talking about? Mera ala geula. That's talking about geula. That's what we said, right? That we plant the seeds in our avodah and golus, v'yolda zachar, and we give birth to a geula she'ein acharei golus, a geula that doesn't have a golus after it because it's a geula of zachar. So that to Tazria, now, we might not have thought this before we learned this Sicha, but now every time you hear Parshas Tazria, you're going to think about, Tazria, that's Geula, right? Now you might not have thought that until it was revealed to you. Okay, said it, but then now, what's Tazria? Geula? Mashiach. What's Metzora? V'ilu, whereas, Hashem Metzora, Shemitzad Atzmayu Hepech Tara, simple pshat in the word Metzora is it's the opposite of Tara, the opposite of purity. V'yesh tzarech, and since there's such a state, there's a need for a pa'ula miyuchedes, for specific action, kedei lifol, in order to bring about hamayim merumatzav, to bring about the situation of the day of his tara, meaning the things have to happen for the mitzvah to become tara, because the state of the mitzvah himself is a state of tuma. So that means that name mitzvah, murder, seems to instruct al tsar machloive galus, the pain and affliction of galus. So how are they connected? How are they brought? The Tazria Metzora, the black-white, they're 2 completely different states of reality. And yet they're somehow joined together at the hip. How can that be? It's question 1. Inside the name. V'ikr, a deeper, more essential question. regarding the continuation of the parshas, meaning the content of Tazria and the content of Metzora. I'm sorry, in this case it's the order, right? Tazria, va'achar kach Metzora. What's Tazria talk about? What's Tazria hint to? One word. Geula. What does Metzora hint to? Golus. Should be the other way around. What do you start with? You start with Golus, and then you get the Geula. So why do we start with the Geula and then get to the Golus? Doesn't seem to make sense, right? The Iker benegei lahemshech haparshas Tazria va'achar kach Metzora, the continuation, the order. The Lechud at first glance, la'achar she'ishik Tazria v'yelda zachar. What did we say that was? That the woman gives seed and gives birth to a zachar. Geula nitzchi she'ein acharei golus. That hints at the complete redemption that doesn't have golus after it. That's Mashiach, the Geula of Mashiach. L'shayich oid. Then it's not relevant. Another matzav, maimeru matzav, another situation, the Metzora of the opposite of Tahara. Shekashri minyan golus. There's no golus after Isha ki Tazria v'yelda zachar. And yet the next parsha is a parsha about golus. That doesn't make sense. Should start with Metzora and then get to Tazria, because after Tazria there's no golus. But there's this parsha Metzora, so why is the order that way? Question 2. Question 3. So also regarding each parsha itself, Shema parsha, the name of the parsha, b'yachas l'techna, relative to its content. As we said, what's the content of Parshas Tazria? All of the Tumah of Tzaras. What's the content of Parshas Metzora? The Torah of Tzaras. So the name Tazria, which is a completely positive name, but the whole parsha is all about negative reality called Tumah. The name of the second parsha is Parshas Metzora, which is negative, but the content of the parsha is all positive. It's the opposite. But Parshas Tazria, Shema, Parsha Mera ala Geula. Isha ki Tazria v'yalda. V'hemshech v'ikra Parsha, but the continuation and the essence of the whole parsha, who b'dinei negoyim, is all about the laws of negoyim. Shemara ala Golus, which is all about Golus, Tuma, and specifically Golus, right? And as a matter of fact, it's interesting. There's a medrash that connects. You can look in footnote 27. Re'ei v'yikra Rabba Parshaseinu, Se'es zu Bavel, Sapachas zu Madai, Baheres zu Yovan, Negetzara zu Edom, that each of the different names of the different types of negaim, different types of afflictions that a person can have in their skin, refers to a different galus that we experienced. So it's all about galus. Saras is galus, and that's what Saras and Panemius is all about galus. That's what we're going to learn. So what does that tell us about galus? It tells us an amazing thing. But so the whole parsha, the beginning of the parsha, is the most powerful expression of geula imaginable. Isha ki Tazria v'yalda zachar. That through our avodah in the time of galus, we're going to bring about a geula she'ein acharei galus. Yalda Zachar, Mashiach. And then the whole parsha is about Golus. Saras, the opposite of what we started with. And then the next parsha, the name of the parsha is the lowest of the Metzora. But what? The whole parsha is about Torah. The whole parsha that's why it's even called Parshas Torah by some people, because the name is so contradictory to the content. So in both cases, the name of the parsha and the content of the parsha seem to be contradictory, right? The parsha Tazria Shema parsha Merela Guli Shik Tazria V'Yalda Zak V'Hemshech V'Ikra parsha Ubedin Negoyim. All of these afflictions Shemara Galus. It's all about Galus. Uba parshas Metzora, Shema parsha. I mean, if you look in a Chumash, it's called Parshas Metzora. That's what it'll say at the top of the page, right? The Shema parsha Kefisha Nikres. The Torah, as it's called in the Torah, Mera Lagolus. The Hemshech parsha, but the continuation of the parsha, the content who b'dinei Torah. It's all about Torah. Zoisti Ateres Mitzvah B'Yem Tarasa Shemera Lagula, and that's all about Gula. So the name of the first parsha is Gula, but the content is Golus. The name of the second parsha is Golus, but the content is Gula. Question 3. Question 4. I'm sorry, the end of question 3. L'chura, at first glance, Cave and Shema Parsha Mavatu and Madgish Teich in a Parsha, since we know that the name of a Parsha is very important in terms of defining the content of the Parsha. And we pay attention to names of Parshas. And there's all sorts of Torah, the Sichas of the Rebbe also, but all sorts of Torah regarding two parshas, two parshas that beg explanation. Eila told us Noach, Eila told us Yitzchak. One's called Noach, one's called Toldus. Why? Same three words at the beginning. Same two words, Eila told us. So why shouldn't the first one be called Toldus and the second one be called Yitzchak?
Who gave the names to the Persians?
Good question. The Jewish people. It just became the name of the parsha. But it's in Chumashim. It's not that it's stam a name that and you can change it. You can decide. Don't know our shul. We like to call it something else. It's every Chumash in the world has the same name above the parshas, right? And when Chazal relate to the parshas, they'll call them those names. And generally, the name is the first words, word or words. Okay. But that has something to do with the whole content of the parsha. And yet in here we see the name and the content are completely contrary. Right? But there'll be all sorts of Torah as to why Parshas Noach is called Noach and not Toldus, and why Parshas Toldus is called Toldus and not Yitzchak. If you had to name a parsha after someone, who would you pick, Noach or Yitzchak? Yitzchak was a bigger tzaddik than Noach, right? I mean, we're closer to, I guess I understand. Noach is a pretty famous guy, did some pretty good things. I mean, his CV is pretty impressive. But it's not Yitzchak Avinu. So, what? Okay, there's also Parashat Balak, 100%, right? What is that all about? Kairach.
And Chayisera, it's not really about.
Yefeh, Chayisera is about her passing. And everybody talks about that, right? The other Rabbi, what's her life really all about? What's the whole Parsha about? The whole Parsha is about one thing. It's very interesting. That's very unusual in Bereshis. What? Seder, but that's pretty clear. That's what it says after her death. That means I don't know. What you just said, Noach, means I don't know what the parsha is about. What's it about? What's in it? What's the whole parsha about? The shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka. The whole parsha is the shidduch of Rivka, Yitzchak and Rivka. What's Sarah's whole life about? Next generation. So interesting, right? But you're right. The whole that question is asked by Bidam Forshim. Why is it called Kaya Sarah? The first thing she does is pass away. What kind of life is that? Well, but okay, the panemius of it we understand, but the questions, it doesn't mean there's not a question. It happens to be interesting answers to the question. So too here. Dalit, fourth question. Also, the Rebbe's asking a question about the name of Mashiach, which I assume you were also asking yourself. Since Mashiach is the Redeemer of the Jewish people, so then why do we emphasize in his name? Hashem matar mahusev inyanei, right? Hashem is to a certain degree, defines the person's being. That's why parents are given Ruach HaKodesh to give a name. Inyan Golus, al kriyasa b'shem etc. We call Mashiach a name that's completely shaykh to Golus. That's a funny name for Mashiach. Okay, those are our four questions. Let's see some answers. We don't have so much time today. We'll go as far as it's long. You see, it's a long Sicha. If we finish it, we finish it. If we don't finish it, Mashiach's still coming. Amen. Hopefully, before we even touch the surface of it all. V'yuven behekti mabir b'inyan and the goyim. First, you have to understand the inyan of neged tzaras. What's tzaras all about? Because some people are more curious than others. It's good to be curious. Right? There are 53 parshas in the Torah. For some strange reason, 2 of them, that means 4% of the Torah deals with this one thing called saras. Like this is such a big deal that 4% of the Torah has to deal with it? 2 parshas on saras? There's only one parsha on the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka, and that's the whole history of the world. There's Avram Avinu doing things. Okay, Lech Lecha. Well, okay, it's the name of a parsha. I get it, but that's only the first aliyah in the parsha, and all the rest of the parsha is about other stuff. 2 parshas about saras. I don't even know what it is. No one of us know what is this. Right? If someone were to walk into this room covered in saras, you and I would look, what in the world is that, or what is that? Don't touch that. Oh my gosh. What is it? How does it work? Who knows? Right? Okay. Not the area of halacha that we all feel very at home in. Okay. 2 parshas on saras? A whole parsha about the whole halachas of what is tzaras, and a parsha on how to be matar. I guess it's something important. So the Alter Rebbe says something amazing in the Likutei Torah. Ala pasuk Adam ki yeh ba'or b'sara. This is a difficult piece here. We won't go through it quickly. You have to understand it. Ala pasuk Adam ki yeh ba'or b'sara. The pasuk says that a person that will have in the skin of his flesh. That's where tzaras is, in the skin of your flesh. That's an interesting thing to say. Mavur b'Likutei Torah. It's explained by the Alter Rebbe. Adam, and Dafka says Adam. It doesn't say Ish. It says Adam. What's Adam? Adam hu b'madrega gedola. He's on a very high level. Lefish hu shleim dekuli. He's on a state of tremendous wholeness, completion, almost perfection. As opposed to Ish. Adam is Adama la'elyon. I'm compared to that which is above. Adam hazeh, this Adam, kishemuchsharin ma'asav, when his deeds are proper, v'tiken kol ha'devarim, and he's fixed everything that has to be fixed. But what could still happen? Yochel liyos, it's possible, it's to be adayin still be'er b'sarei, in the skin of his flesh, which we're going to see later, but already I was going to mention, the lowest level of him. In other words, the most external expression of him. When he meets that as panemius, where is he holding? Very good place. But might there still be some psalis? Might there still be certain things that he hasn't quite fixed? Yes. Where does it express itself? In the most external of external ways. In the skin of his flesh. Not even, the flesh is external. The skin is so external that you shed a layer of it every single day. It's the most external of external parts of you. So this person is on such a high level that the only level of anything that's undesirable is just a residue of it in the most external of external places. Okay, we said that the Rebbe was going to hint at the fact that we don't get tzaras. Now you know why. Who gets tzaras? So, right, someone who's unafraid. Now we can also understand why Mashiach might have it. Very, very, very high level of reality, and in the most external of external places, there's still something that hasn't been fixed, and it expresses itself in this negative way of tum. Loinis barer hara, so that on some low level of reality, some external level. Loinis barer hara, he hasn't rectified some level of negative reality in himself. The psalis mimena, and the psalis is like the leftovers. And so what happens? V'neilodim, and what's born of that? Simonim begashmis bebesara. Signs in the gashmis of his flesh. In other words, this very, very lofty person has these signs that you're not quite finished. But it's in the external of externals. V'heimen agoyim. Mibnei, because shebaruchni is bavedus Hashem, in spirituality, in his person's service of God, tiken b'maisav, he's fixed his deeds, ubira aromin atayv, and he's rectified the negative from the positive, b'kol advarim, and everything. He's done an amazing job. Bira aromin aguf, min a nefesh, he's uprooted the negative reality from his body, from his nefesh abahamis. Rak, what's left? Psalis, some residue. Shebasayf levushav, in the externals of his garments. A dayin lo nizbarer, something very external has not yet been rectified. What happens? L'chein noldu b'besarei. Therefore, it's expressed dafka in his flesh. Rak b'chitzonius, only in chitzonius. It doesn't penetrate. Because B'pnimis is in an amazing place. V'yesh lo, this is the Alter Rebbe on Tzaras. It's going to say quite a bit about Geula and Golus. Right? What's Golus? Just the external veneer of reality. It doesn't penetrate. Wow. Just pop the veneer and what's behind it. Geula. Let's go. V'yesh lo is.
Does this part tie to the part where it said in the house of Rava or something? Yeah, in the house of Rabbi, person who got Saras meant that he was so like tibuk to Hashem.
It's talking about Rebbe himself.
Oh, Rebbe himself got
This is the Metzora, right? Metzora the Bay Rebbe, the Metzora Bay Rebbe, right? I mean, someone very, very light, the Rebbe himself. Rebbe, we know, did have certain medical issues, pain. The Gemara talks about it. The Rebbe experienced great pain sometimes, great affliction. What are those afflictions? Ours. Tzaddik feels our pain. I know they made a whole religion about this. I get it. Where did they get it? Where did they get all these ideas about, him? The cult of the virgin birth. It's all Psukim and Yeshayahu. Where else would they get it? They were all Jews. They just took it all wrong. But who's the savior? This carries your pain. So they made that a whole religion, so you don't have to do anything. Just, you can do anything you want, and he'll take care of it for you. Okay, say it. It's not exactly Yiddish guy. Okay. It's not like it was Yesh Mi'ayin. Let's see if I know it's 8:30. Let's see if we can finish the next paragraph. V'yesh lahis b'diuk lashon hakasav adam ki yeh be'er b'sarei l'neged saras. Kodem kol be'er b'sarei. The skin of his flesh. Shaloizu bilvad. That not only she'ena shaykh le'etzim, it's not shaykh to his essential being, atzmius to adam, which will also be his bones, right? Vagidim shlo, and his muscles, meaning his skeleton and his muscles, which is really him. And then there's stuff on top, and then there's the saran wrap that keeps it all in so we don't blob all over the place. Okay. It's not even relative to the basar, to the flesh, vagidim, and the actual muscles and sinews, the adam. Davar hamishtanev nisvasev bay al yidei achilu shesiyah. Shenasim damu basar kipsara. What's the difference between flesh and your etzem? So your etzem is, you. So that's basically skeletal you. So skeletal you, the doctor will correct me if I'm wrong, but basically once you're full grown, skeletal you doesn't change very much. What can change? Your basar can change. You can put on 50 pounds of basar. What happened to your skeleton? Nothing. Your bones didn't change. Bones don't get fat. Right? I'm sure they don't enjoy the extra work they have to do schlepping you around, but they don't change. Right? What can change? So through eating and drinking, our damu basar, our blood and our flesh will change. Okay, but that's still a pretty essential part of me, but I can do away with banya if you want to get rid of 10 kilos of basar, so you can do that. Okay. Can't get rid of your bones. Bad idea. Okay, so there's the essential parts of us, and then there's the parts of us that might, grow a little and shrink a little through eating and drinking, right? But not only that, that's not where tzaras hits. It doesn't even hit the basar, which is somewhat external to the extent that it can change. It can be a little more, a little less. Ki'im la'ur, but rather the skin that's around it, which is the most external of externals. Ad kadei kach, that as far as I understand, and again, the doctor will correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I understand, we basically lose a layer of skin every day. Is that true, basically?
Not sure.
No? I mean, that's why, it's one of the reasons Chazal say, it's brought la'alocha, that you're not supposed to scratch yourself. If you're davening, so you shouldn't scratch your head, why? Well, you're going to be scraping off skin, and that dead skin is tameh, and you're making your...
You wash your hands.
Yes, you have to wash your hands afterwards. That's why, how do Jews scratch their head? That's how we scratch our head, right? We don't do it with our... Why? Well, because I don't have to wash my hands now, but if I had done it with my hand, I would have to go wash my hands now. Why? Well, because skin comes off when you do that. We know that. Right? Because you see it under your fingernails. Right? There's always a little residue under your fingernails. Right? So evidently that's happening all over. Okay. Or the Shimasaviv, Chitzenius, Umaki, which is the external of it all. It's not the panemius of the person, it's the most external of the person. La basar. Uba'ar basara. It's the skin of his flesh. Chitzenius the basar, the chitzenius of the basar itself, gufa. Adam ki yiyeh ba'or b'sadeh. A person that will be in the skin of his flesh. Hainu she'ein zeh davar harogel. This is not something normal. It's not something that happens all the time. It's not regular, ragil. Ela mikra. It's something happenstance. Mikra nikras. Hayetzi megeder harogel, which goes. It's definitely not common. But gamaz, even then, when this uncommon event happens, that's why it says Adam ki yiyeh, such that it should be. Meaning, this isn't what will be. In the strange instance that there will be in the Or B'Sarai. So it's strange occurrence in Bechlal. And where is it? How does it rag nega tzaras? I'm sorry. Hayetzi megeder ragil, but gamaz, also then, v'haya b'Or B'Sarai, when it's in the skin of his flesh, haya rag nega tzaras, only touches. Nega. Gam biloshin negia. Hainu, what does that mean? She'inyan abilti ratzui, this negative reality, ain't a shayach, is not relevant, a love to him, afilu loy lechitzenu, so even to the most external aspects of him, or besare, the skin of his flesh, elarak negebo, it just touches him, doesn't penetrate. Now, we know actually, it's interesting, because the nega looks like it penetrates, right? I mean, that's one of the signs. They haven't said it, but it's still in his skin. So it's called a nega. What does nega mean? To touch. Touching means I'm not affecting the essence of the thing. I'm just touching the thing, right? Oh, so what's nega tzaras? Simply, we'll pick up tomorrow morning. What's nega tzaras? Simply, the most external expression that could possibly be of something negative, something untoward, something that's not what we want. And why is it dafka in this person? Because this person has brought about a very, very serious illumination of his whole being, but there's still certain things that, so to speak, have to emanate out of him, right?
So
You can think about it in terms of hepatitis. What happens to a person after they have hepatitis? All those toxins that were in, where do they go? They leave. Where do they leave? How do they leave? It's skin. He turns yellow.
The billiard.
Right, the billiard, so yellow. He turns yellow, right? He's not yellow when he has hepatitis. He's yellow when he's finishing. I mean, he's starting to exit, right? And he can. I remember I had a friend in yeshiva. He was partially orange. His eyes were yellow. It was unbelievable. Right? But it comes out. So where is it now? Once the guy's yellow, oh, Baruch Hashem, he's not getting healthy. So that's tzara, so to speak. Everything's expelling all of the negative reality that's in him, and there's a little bit left in the external of the externals. That's the Alter Rebbe's explanation of what tzara is. That's why it's not shy to us.
So it doesn't affect like the insides, like his like bones or chest.
It dafka is ba'or b'sara. It says it's in the skin of his flesh. The external should be external. And even that, it's only a negative. Okay, we'll go back to tomorrow. Thank you again.
Go away from Basar.
We finished Basar.
Oh.
We finished the first 5 chapters yesterday. We were only doing the first 5. What I